Welcome back, everyone. Today, we've put together terrifying stories from national parks, all of them pulled from accounts shared by hikers, park rangers, campers, and search and rescue volunteers who encountered something out in the wilderness that they cannot explain. Now, I want to be upfront with you. Some of what you're about to hear is deeply unsettling. These aren't campfire ghost stories designed to make you jump. These are the kinds of accounts that stick with you, the kind that make you think twice the next time you're out on a trail, or lying in a tent at night listening to sounds you can't identify. We'll be spending time in some of America's most iconic wild spaces today, places that millions of people visit every year, places that look beautiful on a postcard. But as anyone who's spent real time in the backcountry will tell you, those parks have a way of keeping secrets. So get comfortable. Turn the lights down if you want the full experience. Maybe, just maybe, don't listen to this one alone. Before we get into it, if you enjoy what we do here, please take a second to hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find the channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a great time. We drop new content regularly, and it only gets darker from here. Alright, let's go into the woods. Story 1. The third hiker at Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Tennessee, North Carolina. Every year, Great Smoky Mountains National Park is visited by more people than any other national park in the United States, over 12 million annually. And every year, on average, between 3 and 5 people vanish there without a trace. Not injured, not lost, and eventually found. Vanished. This story was submitted to a popular hiking forum in 2019 by a user going by the handle TrailsNTK. The original post has since been removed. Those screenshots were archived before it disappeared. The poster's name was later identified as Tara Kinsley, a freelance photographer from Asheville, North Carolina. She posted once, never responded to comments, and never posted again. What follows is her account, reconstructed from those archived screenshots, read as closely to her original words as possible. It was October, which in the Smokies is peak foliage season. Every overlook, every ridge trail, every creek crossing glows with orange and gold and deep burgundy, and for a photographer, it's a gift. I had been planning this trip for months, a solo 3-day loop through the backcountry, staying at 2 different shelters along the way. The first day was perfect. I mean, genuinely perfect. The light was extraordinary. I got some of the best shots of my career on that first afternoon, shooting from a high bald overlooking a valley that was completely swallowed in color. By the time I reached the shelter, a 3-sided lean-to structure that the Park Service maintains in the backcountry, I was tired in the best way. Muscles aching, mind quiet, happy. There were already 2 hikers at the shelter when I arrived, a couple mid-40s, maybe from Indiana. Their names were Dave and Carol. We cooked separately, but talked for a while after dinner, the way hikers do. They were doing a 5-day loop, experienced good gear. Dave had been hiking the Smokies for 20 years. Carol had grown up camping. I felt immediately at ease with them. We went to sleep as the temperature dropped. 3 of us in the shelter, each in our own sleeping corner. The forest alive with the sounds that forests make at night. Wind, owls, the creek somewhere below us, normal things. I woke up around 2 in the morning, I don't know why. There was no sound that I could identify, no crash, no animal, nothing like that. I just woke up, the way you sometimes do when something in your sleeping brain trips a wire. I lay still for a moment, eyes adjusting to the dark. The shelter had a partial moon coming through the open face of it, enough to see by. Dave and Carol were still in their spots, sleeping bags rising and falling slowly. And at the far end of the shelter, the corner opposite mine, there was someone else. I told myself it was another hiker who had come in late. That happens. The backcountry shelters are first come, first served, and you don't always hear someone arrive if you're deep asleep. I told myself that's what it was. But I lay there looking at that corner for a long time. And the thing is, the shape in that corner wasn't in a sleeping bag. It wasn't lying down. It was sitting upright, back against the wall, knees drawn up, and it was looking at me. I know that sounds like something I might have imagined. Trick of moonlight and shadows and an overactive mind in an unfamiliar place. I've told myself that 100 times since. But here's what I cannot explain away. When I reached for my headlamp slowly, trying not to make sudden movements, because some part of my brain had already gone into a very primal kind of fear, when I clicked it on and aimed it at that corner. The corner was empty. Not empty like someone had quietly gotten up and left. Empty like there had never been anything there at all. No sleeping pad, no pack, no impressions in the dust. Just the corner of the shelter, plain as day. I did not sleep again that night. In the morning, over breakfast, I described what I had seen to Dave and Carol. I tried to be matter-of-fact about it. I'm a practical person. I wasn't expecting them to take it seriously. Dave put down his spoon. He looked at Carol. Something passed between them. One of those looks that couples develop over years of shared experience. "Third hiker," Carol said. She said it like those were words she'd heard before. When I asked what she meant, Dave explained. He said there's a thing that some longtime Smokies hikers talk about. Not in any official capacity, not in any Park Service literature. Just among people who've spent enough nights in the backcountry here. He called it the third hiker, the story of a figure that appears in shelters at night. Always sitting, always in a corner, always seeming to watch the other occupants, always gone by morning. He said he'd never seen it himself. He said he knew 3 people who had. He said one of them refused to go back to the park. Finished my coffee and I packed my bag and I hiked out that day instead of continuing my loop. I told myself it was weather. Told myself I had enough photos. I don't go to the Smokies anymore. I've never been able to explain what I saw. I've never been able to fully convince myself I imagined it. What I know is that whatever was in that corner of the shelter at 2 in the morning, it had been there watching us sleep. Watching me sleep. Watching all 3 of us for God knows how long before I woke up. And when I turned on the light, it didn't want to be seen. Tara's post generated hundreds of responses before it was taken down. Several users claimed to have had similar experiences in Smoky Mountain shelters. One commenter, a retired park ranger, replied simply, "Don't sleep in the corner shelters between." Derek Knob and Siler's bawled, "Just don't." He didn't elaborate. No one knows why. If that one got under your skin, and honestly it should have, please go ahead and tap that like button. It helps us keep bringing you stories like this one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. We've got 5 more to go, and they only get stranger. Story 2. What the Water Carries. Glacier National Park, Montana. There are approximately 762 lakes in Glacier National Park. The water in most of them is glacially cold year-round. Cold, enough to cause incapacitation in minutes if you fall in. Cold enough, park rangers will tell you, to preserve things far longer than they should be preserved. This account comes from a search and rescue volunteer named Marcus Heil, who shared it on a Wilderness SAR discussion board in 2021. Marcus had been volunteering with SAR teams in the glacier region for 11 years at the time of his post. He described the following as the only incident in his career that he found himself unable to file a complete report on. It's not because the facts were unclear, but because he said the facts, written plainly, didn't sound believable. He posted it, he said, because he needed someone else to know. "We got a call in late August about a missing kayaker. It's a low paddler, male, 31 years old. Had launched from a put-in on the northeast side of one of the park's larger backcountry lakes 3 days prior and hadn't returned to the parking area where his vehicle was still sitting. His name was Joel. He was experienced, had paddled solo in the backcountry many times before. His emergency contact, his sister, had started making calls when he missed a check-in by 24 hours. We launched our own boats around 8 in the morning for volunteers, plus a park ranger named Sandra, who had more backcountry experience in Glacier than anyone I'd ever worked with. Clearday.com. Water. Good conditions for a search. By noon, we hadn't found anything. No kayak, no gear washed up on shore. The lake is long and narrow, surrounded by steep terrain on both sides, dense forests coming right down to the waterline in most places. You can't see more than 50 or 60 yards into the trees from the water. It was Sandra who spotted the kayak first. It was beached on a gravel bar on the western shore, not capsized, not damaged, just sitting there on the rocks as if someone had paddled in and stepped out. Normally, that's a hopeful sign. It means the person made it to shore. We landed and spread out. Called Joel's name. No response. The forest at that point was thick enough that you couldn't see more than 20 feet in any direction once you left the shoreline. I was the one who found the camp. It was maybe 40 yards from the water, a small clearing in the trees. Clearly Joel set up his tent, his cook kit, his pack propped against a log. Everything organized, nothing scattered. Not the scene of a panic or an accident. His boots were outside the tent. His sleeping bag was in it, zipped closed. I called for the others. Sandra came first, and we stood there for a moment, just taking it in because it looked so normal. It looked like a camp where someone had stepped away for 5 minutes to get water. It looked like he was about to come back, and then Sandra pointed at the tent. The sleeping bag was moving, slowly, just slightly, the kind of movement that could be breathing, could be someone shifting in their sleep. We called his name again, nothing. Sandra unzipped the tent. The sleeping bag was empty. We both stood there looking at it. Then we both watched it because neither of us had imagined it. The sleeping bag moved again. Slow, rippling movement from the bottom of the bag up to the top. Like, and I'm sorry for this image, but this is the only way I know how to describe it. Like something was inside it, moving upward through the fabric. Like water filling a tube. Sandra grabbed the base of the bag and pulled it out of the tent and shook it. Nothing fell out. Nothing was in it. It was empty. We searched the camp and the surrounding forest for 4 hours. Joel was never found. His kayak, his tent, his gear, all recovered. Joel, never. The official file lists him as a presumed drowning, a tragic accident in a remote wilderness lake. I didn't write what I saw in the sleeping bag into my report. I've thought about this moment almost every day since. I've told myself the bag moved because of airflow when Sandra opened the tent flap. I've told myself it was fabric settling. I've told myself 1,000 rational things. But I was standing there. Sandra was standing there. We both saw it. And we looked at each other after she shook that bag out onto the ground, and neither of us said a word for a long time. On the drive back to the trailhead that evening, Sandra finally spoke. She said, "Glacier takes people." She said it like a statement of fact, like she'd seen it before. I asked her what she meant. She said, "Some places don't give people back. Some places don't give them back all at once." I never worked a search with Sandra after that. She retired the following spring. Joel's sister still posts on missing persons forums looking for answers. I've never been able to reach out to her. I don't know what I would say. Marcus's post was extensively discussed in the SAR community. Many experienced volunteers offered rational explanations for what he described. A few quietly said they had experienced similar things in remote wilderness areas, objects that seemed to behave wrongly in the moments after a disappearance. Places that felt, in their words, watching. No one had a satisfying answer. We've got 4 more stories ahead of us, and I promise you, the next one is one of the most disturbing accounts we've ever covered on this channel. Before we get there, if you're enjoying this series, a like goes a long way. Subscribe if you haven't. We're just getting started. Story 3. The Road That Isn't There. Olympic National Park contains more than 1,000 miles of trails. It's also, according to its own internal mapping records, contains at least a dozen logging roads and fire roads that were decommissioned decades ago. Roads that no longer appear on any official map. Roads that the forest has been slowly swallowing back for 50 or 60 years. Some of them, Park Service staff will tell you quietly, still get driven. This account comes from a woman named Renata Souza, long-haul truck driver, who submitted her story to a paranormal experience compilation website in 2020. She gave her real name and contact information, which the site's moderator confirmed was genuine. Her account is unusual because it was corroborated partially by a second source, a man named Derek Cho, who submitted a near-identical account 2 months later without apparently knowing Renata's existed. Both accounts were from the same stretch of road. Both were from different years. The moderator who noticed the overlap reached out to both of them. As of his last update, they had agreed to speak with each other, but neither had yet worked up to making the call. I'm not someone who believes in the paranormal. I want to say that clearly at the start. I grew up in a practical family. I've spent my life in an extremely practical profession. And before the night I'm about to describe, if you had told me a story like this, I would have smiled politely and changed the subject. I was driving back from a delivery on the Olympic Peninsula in late November. It was after midnight. I had taken what my GPS had said was a shortcut, a rural route that would shave 20 minutes off the drive back toward Port Angeles. I'd never driven it before. The road started out normally enough. It's paved two-lane, the kind of rural highway you see all over the Pacific Northwest. Dense forest on both sides, no other traffic. Rain on the windshield, which is just what November is in that part of the world. Around 12:30, I noticed the road had changed. It had become narrower, not dramatically, not in a way that would have made me stop, but I noticed it. And the pavement had changed too, older, more cracked. The kind of road surface that hasn't been maintained in a long time, and then the pavement ended. The road became gravel. I slowed down. My GPS was still showing me on the route, still showing me moving forward. I assumed I had taken a wrong turn somewhere and ended up on a connecting fire road that my GPS thought was the main route. This happens. I kept going, slowly. The forest pressed in on both sides. The road was barely wide enough for my truck. And then my headlights lit up something in the road ahead. A car parked, facing the same direction I was traveling. Engine off, no lights on, just sitting there in the middle of this gravel road in the middle of the Olympic wilderness at 12:30 in the morning. I stopped. I sat in my truck for a moment. Part of me wanted to reverse, but the road was too narrow to turn around. And I didn't like the idea of reversing in the dark on an unfamiliar road with a drop-off somewhere to my right. I got out. It was a dark-colored sedan, older model. No plates. Windows fogged on the inside. I knocked on the driver's window. Nothing. I knocked harder. The window came down. There was a man behind the wheel. He looked, I want to find the right word. He looked like he had been sitting there for a long time, not in an emergency way. Not injured, not sick. Just like someone who had decided to stop driving and hadn't thought about starting again. He was looking straight ahead through the windshield, not at me. I asked him if he was okay. He said, "Do you know where this road goes?" I told him I didn't, that I'd ended up here by mistake. He said, "I've been trying to turn around for an hour. The road doesn't let you." I didn't know what that meant. I told him I'd get back in my truck and go slowly forward. Maybe there was a wider spot ahead where we could both turn around. He said, "I've been going forward for an hour. It doesn't work that way." I want to tell you I stayed calm. I mostly did. I got back in my truck. I kept going forward. The road went on for another 10 minutes, curving, narrow, no wider spots, no turnoffs. And then it ended. Not at a gate, not at a clearing. It just ended. Gravel becoming dirt, becoming grass, and then the forest, full stop. I put the truck in reverse. It took me 40 minutes to back out. My GPS lost signal completely after about 5 minutes and didn't recover. It was the slowest, most disorienting 40 minutes of my life. Just red taillights against gravel and trees. Backing up a road I couldn't see, inching backward through the dark. When I finally got back to the paved highway, I stopped and sat for a long time. The gravel road I'd come out of, There was no gravel road, there was forest. Solid, continuous, unbroken forest, right up to the edge of the highway. No turnoff, no gap in the trees, no road. I don't know how I got there. I don't know how I got back. The man in the sedan, I drove that stretch of highway 3 times looking for the turnoff. I filed a welfare report for him with the county sheriff's office, describing his vehicle as best I could. They had no record of any call or any missing person matching that description. I've looked at satellite maps of that stretch of highway many times since. There are, in the forest behind it, the faint shadows of what might be old roads, logging roads from another era, almost entirely gone. I think about that man a lot, whether he found his way out. Derek chose account. Submitted 2 months later, he was a park volunteer doing a late-season plant survey, took a wrong turn, ended up on a gravel road he couldn't place on any map, encountered the same dead end. No parked car in his version. But he describes the same sensation of the road resisting reversal, the feeling of the road, stretching behind him as he tried to back out of distance, not behaving correctly. He submitted his account with one final note. I've been a volunteer in that park for 6 years. That road is not on any map I've ever seen. But I've talked to 2 other volunteers since who say they've been on it. 2 people. Same road, different years. No explanation. We'll be back with story 4 in just a moment. If this series is doing what I hope it's doing, you're probably sitting up a little straighter right now. Hit the like button if you are. It genuinely matters. And subscribe. We cover cases like this regularly, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Story 4. Above the Tree Line, Rocky Mountain National Park, Colorado. At approximately 11,000 feet above sea level, the trees stop. The landscape above the tree line in Rocky Mountain National Park is called the alpine tundra, a vast, wind-swept, almost lunar expanse of low grasses, rocks, and sky.
Oh, yes.
It is completely exposed. There is nowhere to hide up there, and nothing can approach across it without being seen for a quarter mile in any direction. Which is why what happened to Owen Bergfeld in the summer of 2017 has no rational explanation that he's been able to find. Owen is a trail runner, or was before this incident. He was 34 at the time, training for an ultramarathon, running the high-altitude trails of RMNP for the first time to test his lungs at elevation. He shared his account on a trail running forum, unprompted. After seeing a thread about unexplained experiences on high-altitude trails, his post was one of the most upvoted in the thread's history. He has since spoken about it on 2 podcasts and has declined every request for a follow-up interview, citing what he describes as an unwillingness to think about it more than he already does. I've been running trails for 8 years. I've run in the dark. I've run in weather. I've covered enough remote miles that the idea of being alone in the wilderness doesn't register as anything unusual. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that what I experienced on that trail was not the product of an overactive imagination or the disorientation of an inexperienced outdoors person. I know what altitude does to your brain. I know what dehydration does. I know what tunnel vision looks like when you're pushing hard. This was not any of those things. I was running the Flat Top Mountain Trail. It's a popular route. Starts in the trees, climbs steeply, breaks above tree line around 10,000 feet, and continues up to the summit of Flat Top at over 12,000. It was mid-morning, clear sky, warm, good conditions. I reached the tree line and kept moving up. At that point, I was maybe a mile from the summit. The terrain above me was completely open. Gray-green tundra, scattered boulders, the trail clearly visible winding upward. I stopped to drink from my hydration pack and looked back down the trail the way I'd come. Habit, I like to check my progress, check the weather behind me. The tree line was maybe 300 yards below. I could see the trail cutting back down through it. There was a figure on the trail. Behind me, maybe 200 yards back, standing still. I didn't think much of it at first. Other hikers use this trail constantly. I thought I'd just passed someone on the way up and they'd caught up while I stopped. I put my pack back on and kept moving. About 5 minutes later, I looked back again. The figure was in exactly the same spot. Now I was paying attention. Had covered maybe a third of a mile. The figure hadn't moved. I thought maybe they'd stop to rest, to take a photo, to eat something. I kept moving. The next time I looked back, maybe another 4 minutes later, the figure was 50 yards behind me. That stopped me cold. 50 yards. On an open alpine trail where I would have heard footsteps on rock, where I would have heard breathing, where I would have seen movement in my peripheral vision. From 200 yards to 50 yards in 4 minutes, on a steep uphill grade with no sound, there's no way to account for that. There's just no way. I stopped and turned around fully to face it. It was wearing dark clothing. I couldn't make out a face. It was wearing something on its head, a hat or hood, and the light was behind it. It was just standing there, not moving, not waving, not indicating anything. I called out, "Hello, are you okay?" The wind took my voice, and I couldn't tell if the sound carried. The figure cocked its head. That's the part I come back to. That slow tilt of the head, the way a dog does when it's trying to understand something. Slow, deliberate. Like something was happening inside that head in response to seeing me, but not in the way a person's head moves in response to things. I turned and ran. I know I'm a rational adult. I turned and I ran. Ran. I went over Flat Top Summit at a pace. I had no business running at 12,000 feet, and I came down the other side toward Bear Lake, and I didn't look back until I hit the trees. When I did look back, the tundra above me was empty. Not the empty of someone who had turned around and gone back. The tundra above the tree line is visible for a long distance. I could see the trail all the way up to the summit. There was nothing on it, nothing on any of it. Just open sky and gray-green grass and wind. I filed a report with a park ranger at the Bear Lake trailhead. The ranger, and I want to be fair, he was professional and took me seriously, wrote it down, and said they'd ask other hikers in the area if they'd seen anything. He also said, and he said it quietly, like something he'd said before, the tundra does things to your eyes sometimes. Things at distance don't always look the way they are. I said it was 50 yards away. He wrote something in his notebook. He didn't ask me any follow-up questions. I haven't run above the tree line since. Several commenters on Owen's forum post described their own encounters with stationary figures on high alpine trails, figures that seemed to move without being seen moving, that stood at altitude in conditions where standing still for long periods would be miserable, that never responded to calls, and that were gone when the witness turned back. One commenter, a mountain guide with 20 years in the Colorado Rockies, wrote, "We don't go above 12,000 afternoon if we don't have to. Not because of weather, because of what's up there." He didn't explain. His comment was the most liked reply in the thread. We're past the halfway point in our series now, and Story 5, I'll be honest, is the one that personally kept me up the night I was putting this together. Don't go anywhere. Like the video if you're with us, subscribe if you're not already, and let's keep going. Story 5, 36 Hours. Yellowstone National Park. Wyoming Yellowstone is one of the most geologically active places on Earth. It sits atop a supervolcano that has erupted 3 times in the last 2 million years. The ground there is thin, hot. In places it moves. It is also a place where people disappear in ways that the Park Service cannot always account for. Between 1997 and 2011, a researcher named Dr. Pamela Reich compiled a private database of what she called temporal anomaly reports from Yellowstone accounts submitted by visitors, rangers, and park staff describing experiences of lost time, disorientation, and the failure of timekeeping devices within specific areas of the park. Her database was never published. A partial copy was shared without her knowledge or consent on a paranormal research forum in 2015. She has since confirmed its existence, but declined to discuss it, citing professional concerns. The following account is one of the 47 cases in that database. It is listed as case number 31. The witness is identified only as male. 44 experienced backpacker, submitted in person. No name is given. I had hiked into the Yellowstone backcountry on a Tuesday. My permit was for 4 nights. I was doing a solo loop in the southern part of the park, away from the geyser fields, through a remote stretch of forest and meadow, along a river corridor that most tourists never see. My watch was a quality mechanical piece. I'd carried it hiking for years. My backup was my phone, which I was keeping in airplane mode to conserve battery. I set up camp the first night with no issues. Ate dinner, wrote in my journal. Went to sleep at what my watch read as 9:15. I woke, as I noted at the time, to sunrise. My watch read 9:15. I assumed my watch had stopped. I checked my phone. The phone read 9:17. I checked my journal entry from the night before. It noted the time as 9:15 p.m. My phone read 9:17 a.m. 12 hours had passed. My watch had simply stopped and then, apparently, started again at some point, because when I held it to my ear, I could hear it ticking normally. I wrote it off. Mechanical watches sometimes stop and restart. It was strange, but not alarming. The following night, I made note of the time very carefully before sleeping. My watch, 9:42. My phone, 9:42. I wrote both in my journal, and I wrote slightly sarcastically. Both devices confirm. It is 9:42 p.m. I woke. Sunrise again. My watch. 9:42. My phone. A notification I hadn't seen before. A low battery warning from Thursday. I had gone to sleep on Wednesday night. It was Friday morning. 36 hours had passed while I slept what felt like one normal night. I'm a rational person. I have a graduate degree. My first thought was that I'd miscounted the days, that I'd been more disoriented by the backcountry than I realized, and had actually slept through an entire day at some point without knowing it. I reread my journal. Every entry was dated and timed. There was no gap. Wednesday night to Friday morning, no journal entry in between, and no memory of any intervening day. My food supply confirmed it. I had rationed for 4 nights. On what I believed was day 2, I was missing 2 days' worth of food. Either I had eaten it in my sleep, or 36 hours had passed. I hiked out that day. I did not complete my loop. The ranger I spoke to at the exit station listened to everything I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she pulled out a sheet of paper and asked me to fill out a report, not an incident report. Something else, a shorter form with different categories. I asked what the form was. She said it was a visitor experience documentation form. She said the park collected them for research purposes. I asked if this had happened before. She said the park collects these forms because there's something worth collecting. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. I drove home and slept for 18 hours. When I woke up, I checked my watch. It was still working perfectly. It has never stopped again. I've tried to understand what happened in Yellowstone. I've looked for explanations. Carbon monoxide from geothermal activity causing altered states. Infrasound from geothermal venting affecting consciousness. Simple miscounting of days. None of them fully account for the food supply. None of them account for the phone's battery drain across a period I don't remember. I have 36 hours of my life that are simply missing. Somewhere in the Yellowstone backcountry. And whatever happened to them, whatever happened to me during that time, I wasn't awake for it. Or I was, and I don't remember. I don't know which thought scares me more. Dr. Reich's database contains 12 other cases with nearly identical characteristics. Lost time ranging from 8 hours to, in one claimed case, 4 days, all within specific zones of the Yellowstone backcountry. The coordinates of those zones are listed in the database. A partial copy that was shared online has those coordinates redacted. No one knows if that was Dr. Reich's doing or someone else's. One more story. and I've saved the most haunting for last. But first, if you've made it this far, you already know this channel is worth a subscribe. Do it now if you haven't. And that like button, it takes 1 second, and it means everything for the channel. Let's finish this together. Story 6. She Came Back Wrong. Denali, the Great One. At over 20,000 feet, the highest peak in North America, surrounded by 6 million acres of wilderness, that is. For most of its area, completely roadless. People who know Alaska wilderness describe Denali National Park with one consistent word: serious, not beautiful, not remote. Serious, as in, it will not negotiate with you. As in, the margin between a good day and a catastrophic one is always smaller than you think. And in that wilderness, in the summer of 2018, 2 women went hiking. One came back. This story was shared publicly, bravely, I think, given what it contains, by Miriam Osei, a wildlife biologist from Fairbanks, Alaska. She posted it on her personal blog in 2019, in a long, careful essay that she titled simply, "What Happened to Claire?" The essay has been shared widely in certain circles, and almost entirely ignored in others. Miriam has given permission, through her blog's contact form, for her account to be read and shared. This is her story. Claire and I have been friends since college. 14 years. We'd done field work together in 3 states. She was careful, competent, sensible, the person on an expedition you most wanted by your side when things got complicated. She knew Alaska. She'd grown up partly in Juneau. She'd done backcountry work in the Brooks Range. Denali's terrain was not unfamiliar to her. We went in for 5 days, a route we'd done parts of before, though not this particular combination of drainages and ridgelines. It was mid-July, long light, good weather window forecast. We were well equipped, told people exactly where we were going. The first 2 days were unremarkable. Beautiful, demanding, unremarkable. We covered good ground, saw a grizzly at distance on day 1, and gave it a wide berth. Camped high on a ridge with a view that I keep trying to describe and never can. On the 3rd day, Claire went ahead of me on the trail while I stopped to collect a plant sample. I was doing incidental botanical documentation, as I often do in the field. She went around a bend in the drainage maybe 300 yards ahead. I finished my documentation. It took perhaps 10 minutes. Stood up and called her name. No answer. I walked to where I'd last seen her. She wasn't there. The drainage continued ahead, steep, rocky, narrowing, and I called again. Nothing. I spent the next 2 hours searching, calling, whistling our agreed distress signal, moving up and down the drainage looking for tracks. I found one set of boot prints in a muddy section, hers based on the tread that ended. Simply ended. On flat ground, no slide marks, no turned soil, no sign of any stumble or fall. The prints just stopped. I made the call I never wanted to make, triggered my emergency beacon. The Park Service helicopter found me 3 hours later. We searched from the air until dark. Nothing. They found Claire the following morning. She was 11 miles from where she disappeared across a ridgeline, in a different drainage entirely. In terrain she would have had to cross at least one significant glacier to reach. She had no memory of how she had gotten there. She was physically unharmed. Physically. On the helicopter ride back, she sat across from me and I held her hands and she looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face before. In 14 years I had never seen that expression. I can only describe it as searching. Like she was looking at me very carefully, cataloging something, comparing me to something she was holding in her mind. She didn't speak on the helicopter. She barely spoke on the drive back. The Park Service medic cleared her physically. No hypothermia, no head injury, no disorientation of the kind associated with hypoglycemia or altitude. She was fine, physically. That night at the lodge, she finally talked. She said she didn't remember anything between the moment she went around the bend in the drainage and the moment she found herself standing on a gravel bar in the other. Drainage? Nothing. Not blackness, not confusion, nothing. Like a film edit. One moment she was in front of me on the trail. Next moment she was 11 miles away. She said there was one other thing. She said that when she found herself standing on that gravel bar, she had known with absolute certainty that no time had passed. Not the subjective certainty of someone who blacked out. She was certain, completely certain that it had been seconds. But her watch, a digital watch with a stopwatch function she'd started when we left camp that morning, showed over 9 hours had elapsed. 9 hours, in what felt to her like no time at all. She came home with me to Fairbanks. She stayed for a week. And over that week I noticed things, small things. She held her fork differently. She sat in chairs differently, with a kind of deliberate attention to the mechanics of sitting, like someone who has to think about how chairs work. She laughed at things that weren't funny and didn't laugh at things that were. She asked me twice, in different conversations, what my last name was. We've known each other for 14 years. On the 5th day, she called me from the guest room at 3 in the morning. I went to her, and she was sitting up in bed in the dark, and she said, very quietly, "I think something came back with me that shouldn't have. And I think something stayed there that should have come back." I didn't know what to say. She went home the next day. She's been in therapy since. She's better in many ways, more herself. The small wrongnesses fading over time, or maybe I've just adjusted to them. She doesn't talk about what happened in Denali. I respect that. But every few months, she sends me a text. Just a check-in. And sometimes at the end of the text, she adds something that she never explains, and that I've never asked her to explain. She adds, "I'm still here. I don't know exactly what she means. I'm not sure I want to." There are, in the records of missing persons cases in Alaskan wilderness, dozens of cases of individuals found miles from where they went missing, with no memory of the intervening period, in good physical health. The Alaska Wilderness Missing Persons Network has documented over 40 such cases since 1980. They have no common explanation. The individuals involved, when they do speak about their experiences, describe the same two things with remarkable consistency: the sense that no time passed and a period afterward of feeling subtly wrong. Most of them eventually feel right again. Most of them. It's where we'll leave it tonight. 6 stories, 6 places. 6 encounters that the people who live them have never been able to explain and have never been able to forget. The national parks are extraordinary places, genuinely, breathtakingly beautiful. I don't want you to walk away from this thinking otherwise. Millions of people hike those trails every year and come home with nothing but good memories and sore legs. But the wilderness is old. It's older than we are, older than any of our frameworks for understanding the world. Sometimes out there in the backcountry, something looks back. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. These stories take real work to research and verify, and your support is what makes it possible. If you enjoyed this series, or if it thoroughly unsettled you, which was the goal, please leave a like. It takes 1 second, and it genuinely helps this channel reach more people. And subscribe if you haven't. We cover cases like these regularly. Strange, grounded, real accounts from the places where the map runs out. You won't want to miss what we put out next. Stay safe out there. And maybe, just maybe, don't go off trail after dark.